Good evening, everybody. It's Monday, July 26, 2021. My name is Mike Langford, and welcome back to another episode of DearBands Live. The podcast that explores the paths and stories of career-minded artists and music industry professionals. My guest today, co-founder and guitarist for alternative metal band Sumo Cyco. Their sound and style has been described as a mix of System of a Down, Rob Zombie, and No Doubt. Their success has landed them tours with acts such as Nonpoint, Butcher Babies, and Jinjer, and appearances throughout Europe, New Zealand, the United States, and Canada. Sumo Cyco recently released their third album titled Initiation on Napalm Records, and also recently announced a partnership with Dean Guitars. A lot of artists had trouble finding their footing since the shutdown early 2020, but the writing is on the wall for artists who can adapt and thrive in the constantly disrupted and evolving state of the music business. Please welcome our guest today, guitarist, songwriter, and producer, Matt Drake.
Hello.
Matt, how's it going?
Hi. How's it going?
It's going good over here.
I was just playing along to this lovely
You're jamming along?
elevator jazz kind of thing. I had my guitar for a minute. I was like, oh, right on. You got a little jazz thing going on, a little soft jazz.
It's my some people have those like comfort pets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like that just helps. It helps me. It helps calm me down a little bit. So
It's a calming tune you got. The piano
it
especially.
Thank you.
Not bad, not bad. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. How you been? What's new? What's going on?
Oh man, besides from being in this pandemic, I mean, we've been I've been living in a house. But we've been lucky enough that we do a lot of our stuff ourselves. So, we've released a new record in May it was. And before that, we did, four music videos. I mean, we started around last November making the music videos, and we launched the first one in February, I think, and each month from there. So we've been pretty busy. We make all the sets and do everything ourselves as best we can. So we've been busy. This past month, I haven't. This past month, I've been like, we've been doing, it's been more like interviews and stuff still, like being with the label. They've had us doing a lot of PR over the past couple months, but like, we had to do like a couple weeks of downtime of like, we had other video ideas. We still have them, but like we're just a little burned out. That happened a little bit to us too.
That can definitely happen. Talking about the videos. It's one of those things. I have it on my list of questions to talk about, but it's one of those things. It's a can of worms because the videos look awesome, and to hear they're kind of done in house, it's like there's so many questions.
I appreciate that you think they look awesome because it's like I think that's one of those. I think they look awesome, but I also can see how some people don't think. It's like some of it's pretty weird, and some of it's meant to not look awesome. We have some videos that look really grainy and weird, and we've like did it on purpose, and people think it's just cheap, and I'm like, well, it is cheap. We did it in our house, but on purpose. How it looks. So we have a lot of love and a lot of hate that comes at us. That's what we do. We spark emotion.
Well, yeah, no, and it's good. It's good to have that division, people having opinions on stuff. But the nice thing about that is like when you have people who like what you're doing and people who don't like what you're doing, you just turn to the people who like what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean,
makes it easy.
Totally. It's not like we don't love what we're doing. I just I believe that some people don't completely understand that what we're doing. Somebody will see our video and be like, this is so amateur, and I was like, it is amateur. Like that's the point, man. Like this is what we do, and this is how we've done it, and this is how we're going to keep doing it. So, and that's how we've kind of grown for the past 10 years. And maybe it doesn't look like it was shot with $10 million videos, but the ideas are half the time are better than any of those videos that people spend too much money on and forget that they have a great idea. And that's how we aim for is like, these are cool ideas? Do people like really want to watch the video through? And I think that's more important than if it looks like $1 million sometimes,
No, I could probably rant. I could rant from a producer perspective too. I could probably rant about the amount of bands and artists where the biggest problem is they don't have money to record. They don't have money to make a video. They don't have money to tour. And it's like some of these things, you can do them on a budget. Also, you can learn some of these skills.
You should be doing music. If any bands are, if a band's saying we don't have money, but they have an iPhone, then they can make a music video. Like it's just that's the reality right now. It was the reality like 5 to 10 years ago. Like we did two music videos, and they're supposed to look really cheap. But when BET was dropping a lot of those rap videos, I love them, but they looked like hand
yeah.
cam style. We did one for a song called Crowd Control and I don't know, Fuel My Fire. They were like double videos and it's about in a house and the whole thing just looks like this. And it was the first time I ever had slow motion on my iPhone. And I was like, this slow motion is so good. And Sky was like, yeah, but like, you know, it's not as film, it doesn't look film quality all the way. And I was like, but let's just go with it like the way a rap video would. We'll throw some dollars in the air. We'll just shoot it like that because we never had slow motion before, right, on an iPhone. So we just used the iPhone and we shot these two videos with our iPhones and we thought it looked great and put it up. And so from that day forth, especially, I was like, Sky, like, you know, we still use cameras and we've got our gear, but we don't upgrade too much. We just try to deal with what we got, and it's more make the idea and learn how to do some work in post. You know, I still upgrade when we get a little too obsolete, some of it, but yeah, even my new iPhone, I just picked this iPhone up and I'm like tripping out at the camera quality. I was like, this is amazing, like really, really good stuff that they're putting out right now. And it's going to help more younger artists if they can be motivated. That's the problem that everyone has is they're hoping, you know, a lot of artists are just like, and I think actually, I don't want to say it's always like that anymore. I think 5 years ago now, I think really lots of kids are starting to really they're like, man, I got to do this with or without a label. They're starting to get it. I think but with these iPhones, you should be able to do it, or this technology, you should be able to put yourself out there pretty good if you're motivated.
We talked about it briefly before we started going, but started broadcasting this. But like, it's that drive that artists have, and the idea of wanting to record music or make videos, or, you know, like before it was just like, oh, we book our own tours. It's like, yeah, but there's so much more you can do these days with technology. And you talking about the iPhone or your modern day phone, you look at the back of it and you see like 3 or 4 cameras on there, and you see the quality that you can get, and it's like
the wide angle lens is just gorgeous on the new iPhone.
Yeah,
I'm like, look at this thing. It's just beautiful.
And so when I hear all these problems, I'm like, oh, what you actually are telling me is that you need someone with the ideas and the money and the equipment. When if you have the idea, you'll figure it out.
It's true. And I think some people they need to just see it happen once. You know, like I've been with some bands that come in here and they record with me, and I really walk them through just a much faster process of how you would record music today. I walk them through ideas of like, you know, to let go of that you're going to need $3,000 or $4,000 to make a music video. That's funny. I'm only saying 3 or 4,000 because 10 years ago you'd want 10,000, and 15 years ago you'd want like $20,000 or $30,000, maybe $100,000. But now it's like, oh, if you can get $4,000 or $5,000 towards a video, that's pretty good. Sky and I aim for, usually we spend between maybe $1,100 to $2,000 a video, depending on if I'm building. It's usually building. When we're building sets, if I'm building stuff, that's where we spend our money on. It's so that we can have the production value look like, oh, that looks like a cool thing. But we don't spend any money on the gear or letting anybody shoot. We don't hire many people. We've only had one other person really help us in that way. And we have another like official member, or I would call her the official member, 5th member, Francesca Ludicar, who's our graphic artist that works with us like constantly. She's the only other one that really we hand the camera to help film with us. And mainly because it's just keeping budget. Like we're just like, these are where the costs. And when you've got your own ideas, you might as well just learn it and figure it out, you know? And the worst is a band that'll wait instead of just do it. Like, so what? You don't put out the best quality thing the first time. As long as your song's good. If your song sucks, you shouldn't even be making a fucking video. That's just stupid. I hate when I see artists that are like, you know what I mean though. Like, it's like, you know, it's just a shame to see somebody like put a song out that the song isn't even that good, but hey, put it out, cool. But like, just keep making music, doing your thing. But if the song, I think that what's happening is people are so into like this multimedia world, TikToks to this, that, and the now we're starting to like, are the songs even awesome or not? That's an important thing to me still. I'm like, that we're connecting with the song. You still want to go to the gym and work out to it, or is it you just want to go on YouTube and watch the video? Like, we need to make sure the song still goes. And once we love the song, then we make a cool video to it. And I think that anybody that's writing a good song, they probably have some kind of vision for their video, don't they? I know I do. Once I'm writing a song, I'm just like, oh, I can see this, I can see that. Just figure it out, you know? And even if the video comes out a little cheap, at least you get it started. That's how you're going to learn to get it better at it, right? And get tighter at it and start figuring it out better. Well, we were just talking about the girls with Nicole Hughes there, like doing soft call. Those girls when we met them, they were like super, super young. Sky actually worked with them a little bit too. And they're making their stuff. They know how to do it too. They're just right on it. And it's super smart at a younger age to get in and know how to do that now because you're eliminating so many middlemen that cost you a lot of money.
Yeah, and they're saying too, people that could maybe say no to an idea. And you're like, no, I believe in it. I'm gonna try
Yeah.
this. Like, let's
Well,
try this. Like,
that was Sky's game from day one when she left Capitol Records. Our singer, if anybody's doesn't know, our singer was with Capitol Records as a solo artist first. And when her record cycles died and it was kind of just slow, and she was like, I'm going to start something else. Her whole reason she did was so that she couldn't hear the word no, like from anyone anymore. And she was like, I'm just going to do this exactly how I want. And no matter how many haters are this, I'm just going to weed through it and just slowly get the people that like what I want to do. And that's what we've just been doing for years.
well, you scroll through the wiki page and you see that it's working. Like, I've been following you on Facebook and Instagram, but like you scroll through the
Cool.
wiki page and you're just like, no, things are working. So the idea of not needing to hear the word no and just trying things. I just do want to put this up here quick. Don, the chat was saying it's cool that you shared the video of building the video set and stuff. Yeah, behind
Cool.
the scenes, untapped content for a lot of bands and artists. But at the same time, not to keep going on about this, but like at the same time, a lot of bands don't have behind the scenes because they're not doing enough. They're not doing
Yeah.
anything. So yeah,
But it's like it's the most important thing actually. I think it's like for young bands
document
to
it.
show them what you're going through. Like I mean, I think that the smoke and mirror game for all those years but like this is what's crazy. Is people don't realize that the industry hasn't really ever changed. Like the bands have always been fucked. The bands have never made the money. Even when there was like $1 million being put into that music video, they were still going home to their shitty ass apartment. It was just the label paid for a lot of money into that video. So that label now has to get that money back somewhere.
Yeah.
So on the record sales is where they're going to recoup. So the artists, even though they look like they're just killing it, they're still going home to their 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment if they're lucky. And it's
If they're lucky.
yeah, and they're just making it through no matter how. And that was back then even. I'm telling you, unless you were like a top #1 artist, if you were just a rock and roll band that had a song on the radio and you were just touring, you were still not. It didn't matter. It just did, and it's the same way now. It's the same way now. You put a song out, you put a video out. Hopefully it does some stuff on radio, but the real thing is you just got to be motivated to keep working and be okay with, there's just it's okay with being honest and going like, hey man, I do this as a passion. We love the thing. God, everybody would love to make a paycheck from it, but you're gonna have to put in a lot of work to get a paycheck out of this one. I'm so honest. I get young kids in here that I feel like by the time they finish recording with me, I'm scared that I might have stopped them wanting to do music. And not because I want them to scare away, because I tell them just how serious they got to really be. Like some kids are in here, and I had a kid that was in here I think he was about 19, recording a 6-song EP about 2 years ago, and he's like, "What's your #1 suggestion for me to try and grow my band seriously?" And I was like, "Well, you're in the wrong city. You need to like, are you going to college? What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I don't know what I want to do." I was like, "Don't do college. Don't do any of that crap. Pick yourself up right now. If you're dishwashing in Toronto, get out, go to LA and dishwash in LA and start playing clubs in LA, because whether we like it or not, there's like the 1% that gets like noticed, and there's you got to work. You got to really go out there and do it." And I think a lot of people, they're like, wait, I'll play Toronto and hopefully the clubs, somebody will walk in the club. I think people still believe that can happen. And I think that that's like a fucking dream and a half for that to happen. I think you got to go there, where if you're really asking my opinion, I think I scare people when I tell them, quit school, go there. If that's your fucking passion while you're young, do it now, because you're definitely not going to want to do it when you're 30 or something. Like that's where it gets even harder, right? So sometimes I scare people, but
we could dig into this too. I had similar conversation, and it's one of those things where part of me, I'm like, if what I'm saying is making you quit or want to quit, consider that a blessing, because you can go through a lot of hardship to get to the same point. And the other one too is bands. We talk about, growing and stuff, and with being in Toronto, I'm like, well, it's like 3-4 hours to Detroit. It's 3 hours to Buffalo. I'm like, that's where you got to go Because if you're
Very
in a rock,
simple.
if you're in a rock
It's not
band and
hard.
you're in Canada, it's tough. I'm like, that's what you need to think about doing. Get your visas, and to kind of look on their faces, and they're just like, well, okay, what if we don't want to do that though? Like, how do we get signed and like get a tour bus and stuff? I'm like, I don't know how to help
I don't know how to do that.
I don't know how to help
Like,
you.
all I can say is you have to, if you want to bypass being that band that wants to do the grind, then you just should sit in your studio and write 1,000,000 songs, like 100,000,000 songs, as many as you can, and then hand them to a publishing company and just hope that publishing company finds a gem out of there. But like even then, you're just hoping that like a Netflix or somebody will find it and play it. Like that's a dreaming, man. That's dreaming. That's
Okay.
dreaming when TikTokers are like playing dancing and getting 2 million views, and you're hoping somebody's going to check your new song out without doing a lot of work. Then you're in trouble, man.
I'm gonna try to clamp down on this here because we could fill up an hour and
Sorry,
a half
yeah,
easily
it's
with
true.
this.
It's true.
You've been in music. You've been in music a while now, and you've been on both sides of the fence as an artist and as a producer. You're playing guitar. Is that your first instrument? Like, did you have come from
Guitar's
a
my
musical
first
family?
instrument. Guitar's my first instrument. My parents were musicians. Both my mother and father were musicians. They were road dogs. I mean, really. In Canada, mostly. My dad was a keyboard player, but it was organ, old Hammond organ. He was doing rhythm and blues. My mom was a backup singer and then became the lead singer of his projects. He used to play with people like B. King and John Lee Hooker.
Okay.
Really, really awesome acts. So I was born to it. Like my dad was playing in the back of clubs in Toronto, and I'd be sitting like in the kitchen because I wasn't old enough to be in the club, but he had to move all his gear in, and he had to take care of me because like mom's working, playing somewhere else, whatever. And he was doing like a solo gig where he's got like a rhythm machine and he's doing that kind of stuff. We had to be at hotels. Like it was different in the 70s, like or 80s, and I would literally just sit in the kitchen eating like fries and chicken wings and listen to my dad jam all night while people danced. That was the other thing that was cool. People used to dance to bands back then. That was really cool. That's what they go to do. I was like, that's sick. So yeah, I did that. I grew. That's how I kind of grew. And because I was more into I was born in 78. So I got into, around the 10-year mark, I started wanting to play guitar because I was into rock more than rhythm and blues, even though my dad was. So my dad didn't want to buy me a guitar at all. He didn't even want me in music. He was like, don't do this, kid. Like, trust me. Not kidding. He was not supportive at all. He was a beautiful man and he was a killer musician, but he was trying to be honest with me at just how hard of a lifestyle, because there's a lot of sacrifice. And I mean, it's not a sacrifice if you love what you're doing, but family, friends, events, there's a lot of things that get sacrificed for you when you book a date and somebody won't, your significant other wants you to go to a wedding or something and you're like, oh, sorry, I got to play. I don't want to let the band down. Everything. That shit happens 24/7 to musicians. And all that stuff has to be thought about. My dad was trying to tell me that when I was young and I didn't listen. I was like, nope, I'm in, Dad. I'm going for it. I still love him. God bless him. Rest in peace. But he was right sometimes. There was some times where I was like, man, he is right. It is a really, really, it's one of the hardest roads you can probably go down to make a really good occupation, like good money out of. But I pushed him and said, I need to learn guitar. And Mom finally was like, you got to let him learn guitar. Like, that's what he wants. And he was like, you got to learn organ or keyboard, piano. You got to learn the treble clef and the bass clef. Like, it's just not right. Like, he was really bent about it. So I had to learn guitar and bass at the same time so I could learn both clefs because I didn't want to play keys. I was like, this is so lame to me. Like, it's like the late 80s, Clash was big. Like, I wanted to grab my guitar, man. Like, I was like, this is crazy, right? So yeah, I just learned bass and guitar right away. And he put me in lessons, and he took me out of lessons 6 months later because he realized all I was doing was asking the teacher to teach me like the next Metallica riff or the next Slayer riff. Like I'd come home learning Pantera riffs, and he'd be like, "Do me a scale," and I'm like, "What's a scale?" Like, and so he's like done with the lessons because he's like, "I'm not paying for another dime. You're using your ear, and this guy's just showing you this stuff." So about 6 months to a year, I did lessons, and then from there it was just like boogied on with my ear, and as I got more serious, the more he did start to support. And I went to college to Fanshawe for recording and engineering, and he was super supportive of that. And unfortunately, he passed away. He didn't see everything else I've done, but he still got on board. He was definitely he was really proud of me that I went to college or at least tried to go. Actually, I didn't finish. I jumped bail for a band, went touring instead. But he was proud of me for at least trying to actually use it for more than just being like in a rock band. He was like, oh, he wants to record, engineer. He knew that I was serious about that stuff, so he did support me. I don't want to make it sound like my father didn't, but he definitely didn't support my first punk rock band that played in the basement. And when he came home from work, would probably drove him nuts every day. Wailing away on this like kind of like no effectsy or but Descendants sounding kind of punk rock, and he was like this rhythm and blues guys. He wasn't digging the kind of rhythms we were putting out.
Was that band your first band, you'd say?
Yeah, I had my very first punk rock band was called Henry's Volunteer. We were out of Cobourg, Ontario, and I was young, man. I was like 15, and I was lucky enough that I was getting pretty tight quick, and we did some pretty good. We worked with this company called Raw Energy out of Toronto.
Raw Energy, I remember them.
Yeah, yeah, and we did shows back then with like Sum 41 and like all these, just all the bands before they even got big. I watched them get big while we got smaller, and then I was like done with it. I was like, I'm not. This band just isn't working. So it was like time to move on to something new. And yeah, I took a couple of years off, went to Europe, and kind of like just found myself a bit and stopped listening to punk rock for a while, and then went into reggae and ska and just a ton of stuff. And when I came back, I started working day jobs trying to figure out my own project, and I started this little band called Dodger, which is like a reggae rock band that we did kind of thing, kind of sublimey. I don't know what do you want to call it. It is what it is. It was like Faith No More meets Sublime. I don't know. That's where I was going with my project for a while, and it did all right. We did like a couple records, and we were out of Toronto, and we could we could sell out Elise Palace, or but it never got further, and mainly because we were all still friends, and we didn't really know how to work business. We didn't know how to attack. We were that band, and I think a lot of bands don't do it too. That when they get started and they see a crowd and they're having a good time, if they're not thinking like entrepreneurial, like how to make money, they don't even bother setting up their merch half the time. They're just stoked that people are in front of them partying, And we were that band. We were like, nobody's standing behind the merch. We were only like, 20. We don't want to, we're just partying. And I was like, man, I think back about all the shows we played in front of hundreds of people that we didn't even have a merch, and the merch is still in the van just because one of the band members couldn't be bothered to carry it up front. And that's not how I think now, of course, but that's how it was for a while. And that band really suffered because we really started growing pretty well. Edge 102.1 was starting to support a couple one single. And there was some cool stuff that we opened up for Goldfinger and some cool bands in Toronto. I was like, oh, we're expanding, but it took a long time and I could not get them. I actually tried to talk the band into moving to LA. And I said, look, we're all working shitty day jobs here. We should all move to LA. And they were like, no. And then I got a friend told me, hey, you can try out. This girl in Toronto is looking for a guitar player for a Capitol Records recording artist. And I was like, oh, what does it entail? And they were like, you just got to learn these couple songs and come to an audition in Toronto. And I just told my band, hey, I got to go try this. Like I want to make music, like money playing music. I want to try this. So, and even though it wasn't a punk rock thing, that's what I was into, that kind of attitude. I still was like, what's the real industry about? Not the industry that we're, just booking ourselves at a club. Like, what's Capitol Records? Like, I want to see what's under the hood of this shit, So I took this job. Sky Sweetnam basically got this record deal at 14. I think her record came out at 15 or 16, but she auditioned me around 16, I think, somewhere around there. But she auditioned me. I had to audition 2 or 3 times, and I got the job. And I thought I was going to work for 6 months for her, supporting this record that Capitol Records was going to put out. But because it's such a big record label, and they were fighting like at the time, Avril Lavigne had just been released. So at that time, record labels start to try and, oh, this is what's big, so we're going to find other artists that are going to sell too, right? That's the way it goes. So Sky was like picked up going like, Capitol's like, this is our girl. And instead of putting the record out 6 months later to a year, they pushed it back almost 2 years and promoted her for like almost 2 full years, putting 2 singles out, touring us for almost 2 years before the record actually came out, where the point where Sky was sick of the songs because she was like, man, these are like 2 years old now. But we did like about a 3 to 4 year promo push on her first record. It was a big, long push from like about 20, almost 3 to 4 years worth of pushing this record. And we toured with some really big acts back in the day that Capitol put us on huge tours. And that's how we met. That's how Sky and I met, the singer of Sumo Cyco. And yeah, we've been best friends ever since. And we, we kind of parted ways when she had to go write her second record, and I kind of went back from California. I went back into Hamilton, where I am out of Toronto, and I started back with my band Dodger, and it started growing even better. But then Sky's second record came out, and it did all right, and I was kind of over here, and she was over there, but nothing was kind of escalating too far, or wide enough, should I say. We weren't reaching enough people. And so one day Sky comes and visits me while I'm playing in Wakestock. This is like a festival in Toronto. And I was like, man, I haven't seen her in like a year or something, or a year and a half. And she just comes running up. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. And like 2 days later or a week later, we were listening. She was at a studio, came and visited me at a studio, and we listened to this record from a band called Jinjer that I like out of UK. And they do this. There's an amazing record from them in the early 2000s called Babylon. And I was just starting to fall in love with this record. I said, Sky, check this record out. She went home, checked the record out. She called me and said, that's it. You're in here, you're over there. We both feel like we're in limbo. I want to do like a girl version of this. Like I really want it to be, circusy, dance hall, no doubt rhythms with metal guitars, and I want to rap and scream, and I just want to have no rules. And I was like, I told her, I'm like, are you sure you understand the road that you're about to go down? I really did have this conversation because she was actually getting calls at the time from other agents and other people saying, hey, we know that you've slowed down on your cycle right now. There was a big A&R producer that was trying to get her out to LA to do like a duet with a rapper. And Sky turned all of it down because she was like, nah, I want to really chase after what I'm looking for, like really specifically. And I really sat her down and was like, man, this LA guy just offered to fly you out. Like, are you sure you just want to go down this road? Because you're starting almost over, because you're alienating yourself a little bit from some of the pop world. And some of the metal world's not going to accept you either, because you're you really are making your own path. And she's like, I'm in. So I was like, oh. I shook my head a lot, and to me, I was really excited because I love heavy guitars, and I was like, "That's cool." Like I'm excited, but I also felt a little, nervous that we were like going to try it. And first we weren't going to be a band. We like literally went from there to going, okay, let's make a couple songs. So we made a song called Mercy and a song called Limp. We made 2 music videos, and we literally just told ourselves it's going to be a duet, like an online thing where we're just going to throw it online. Here's a couple music videos we made by ourselves, and this was like over 12 years ago. We made the music videos ourselves even then. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but if you ever have a chance, check out the video Limp, because it's a crazy zombie video that we put together. It's like the second time we'd ever filmed a music video, and I think that one's some of our fans still say it's like one of their favorite ones. But so and that was the same thing with the videos. We just decided to buy up gear. Sky's like, I'm just going to buy this. I'm going to buy this. We're going to go into debt right now. And just, no, seriously, that's what we did. And so we bought a bunch of gear up, and then made those videos and put them out. And we really didn't think we were going to be a band until we got a lot of people starting to follow it, and people just started to like what we were doing. And we put up a couple more music videos, and then we started realizing that we should make a record, because we just got enough people asking for one. And that's how we kind of got to that place where it was time to start making records. And it's not a platform I love. I don't actually love making records. I love what we were doing before that the most, which is we were trying to just put a song out every 2 months and a video out every 2 months, and kind of stay connected all year round, 24/7. Where now, when you have this record, now you have like a steep of songs that some songs don't even get attention because you don't make a music video for it. And I don't like that. I like every song to get attention. I think they're all great. I wrote them. So, so I don't like this whole thing. Like, oh, we'll put out 12 songs, 6 of them get a video, and then 6 don't. Like in this day and age, they all need if you want them to get attention, they should have a video. That's for sure. So yeah, like it's funny how we were never going to make a record, and now we made 2 independently, and then 2 acoustic records, and then we've signed this deal for another one. So we just put this one out with Napalm. So it's exact opposite in the past 5 years of what I thought was going to happen, but it's been good. Like we've been guiding ourselves pretty good. I guess that's my little story.
I have a list of questions even we talked about there, but even just talking about the idea of putting records out these days, like the music business, there's the model that changed because of Napster. There's the model that a lot of the industry is still trying to cling on to, and I do feel like there's some value in that album cycle, but at the same time, the last year alone, because so many bands and artists held back their record because they didn't feel like putting their single to radio to support their tour because they couldn't tour. So like those gears all kind of got got wrecked a little bit. So I still think there's some value in putting out an album or an EP if you need like a body of work to go out and tour. But there's a few bands where I'm like, you toured an EP for like a year and a half. You know, they toured with like 5 or 6 songs and a couple of covers, and I'm just like, good on them for
Yeah.
for
Oh
just
yeah,
getting in there and doing
absolutely.
that.
I think that's like in this day and age, that's a good way to think. Like I told Sky, it's the same thing. Napalm's been awesome with us so far, and but I was smart when we got together with Napalm. I was careful about signing too big of a record deal. Like this was any label comes to you and thinks that you're a good band, you're always going to get a big offer for a lot of records because if something goes right, then they own you for a lot of records. If it doesn't go right, they also own you for a lot of records, and now you're screwed because they don't have enough to put into you if you haven't shown them enough to gain. And now you're stuck with this huge, I own them 3 more records and we didn't get enough traction, and now they're not going to put as much money in, and now I can't put it out by myself. You actually fuck yourself. So you got to be really careful with that shit. And I was very careful about that. We fought for or not fought, but we went back and forth for a good year and a half to make sure that we didn't get into a 4 record deal because it's a scary world to do something like that. And we really wanted to reach Napalm. We want to work with them. We want to feel like a team. So we came up with a really good deal between each other, but one that we can both value. And that's a really important thing. And I think bands have to worry about, when you see these big record deals, you got to be careful about that stuff because you get signed in for way too long and you're screwed. So right now we are in a good place. If everything's going right and we're expanding with Napalm, then we'll do another record together, and that'll be interesting. But yeah,
Well, you said it again. You're partnering these days. You're partnering with a label, management, booking. You're on the same team. If you're not, if you're part of the old mindset of the artist, where you go in on your hands and knees, begging them to help you to do all that stuff, who probably gets the deal is the band that can confidently, with their chin up, walk in and go, "This is what we're doing," and try to make something that's beneficial for both parties. Other thing you mentioned too, like getting locked in to a lot of records, because you mentioned with Sky's first record where they did like 3 or 4 years of promo basically.
Oh, it was a long time.
Yeah, they can be. So the idea of an album cycle being 1.5 to 3 years, if you're signed in for 4 records, 4 records at 3 years of that's a long time. And then the final thing to keep in mind, if trends change drastically, where now you're not the hot thing anymore and you get shelved,
you're just sitting there now.
What do you do? Yeah.
You change your band name. You actually disband and you screw yourself. No, it's what happens, unfortunately.
No, you have to.
You have to be careful with that because you don't want that to happen to you where you're like, we're screwed, we're locked now. And we're not, we've got everything good on that one. We're really happy with the deal we worked out with Napalm. We're happy with the record we put out. It sounds really good. We're working on.
It sounds great. Yeah.
We did our best to work on it all by ourselves. I had another producer. First time I ever had a producer actually, or second time actually. Was the first time I've ever written with another producer, just sat and was like, here's my guitar, here's the riffs I got, let's all work this out. And it was really fun. His name's Kane Churko, and he's out of LA, actually, or out Vegas, and he's going to be, and he's actually Canadian, but he's been living out there he's almost been out there his whole life. I think he's going to come back. He's been talking about it lately, but he did 2 songs on the record, and they were like the first 2 songs. We had written before, demoed out a lot of the songs before, but Kane wrote Vertigo and Overdrive with us, and which are more commercially viable for, that's why we were working with him, is to try and find some songs that would reach, because we're a little chaotic. We wanted to try and reach radio. And it was an amazing experience because I learned a ton of crap that I'd never, I was always engineering and producing. I went to Fanshawe for it, but I never finished. And there's a lot of things that I'm always learning from somebody. You always you walk into a studio, and if you can't walk out learning something, you weren't paying attention. And
I agree.
And with Kane, it was like we weren't just going there to work on 2 songs, and we had, obviously we have to pay him. He's a pretty big producer. Thanks to our fans for helping fund that. But we went in. And I didn't look at it just like, oh, we're just getting these songs done. I looked at it as like, I'm learning from a very big producer right now on how he would construct, engineer, and mix this thing. Because he's one of those from start to finish guys. He even masters it himself. He's pretty much just right into his master buses and just like recording as hot as you'd ever see. Like if I see you've got speakers back there, you know what I'm talking about. Like his dB range is just insane. Like when I sent it to when I did my rest of the record, because I could match up a little bit, I was like I learned some stuff. I went in and was like, because pandemic hit, I wanted to do the rest of the record with him, but we were like we're gonna bring it home and we're gonna do with the rest of it. So I used those as skeletons. The two songs I did with him is like, okay, that's gonna be our snare drum tone. I got to try and match that up, kick drums. So we wrote all the rest of the record, and when I sent it to like a mastering guy separately to go like, hey, let's try and get these to sit together, he was like, that's impossible. He's like, we need to bring Kane's like weight. He's like, Kane was sitting at like, I don't even want to, it doesn't matter. It's probably boring if somebody doesn't know the numbers, but it was just drastic. He's an intense guy. He's just one of those guys that showed me how to break so many rules that I thought you just should never break. You should not. I was told when you go to school, don't do that, this. And Kane was like, you shouldn't listen to this. Just go for it. And I was like, wow. Like, and I asked him like, oh, do you watch the meter? He's like, nope. Like I just, as long as it's not distorting the way I don't want it to, because he uses distortion on everything. That's how he gets this. And it's like, whoa, saturation city. And he's like, as long as it doesn't sound shitty, it's in. And I'm like, the volume is insane. Like it drove me nuts for 6 months trying to get my mixes to there, and I just gave up. I was like, I got to find somebody to help me master to that, because it's just he's an anomaly as an engineer, because I've worked with a ton of them and nobody's ever given me a mix that hot. It's actually lower. The real mix is hotter that he sent me that are on the record, because I was like, I can't figure out how to get our mixes the same way without them sounding shitty. So I had to bring him down a little bit.
I think this is a whole other episode.
Sorry, you get me going.
No, because I'm the same way. You just start going on certain things. But yeah, just some of the technical things when you see how other people are working. And similar background, like I went to school for audio, and but I ended up working with the producer at Sony, Jeff Delzile.
Cool.
Like watching him work versus what we were learning in school. And I'm like, okay, but what we learned in school is good, but what I'm watching him do is what ends up on the radio. And some of the rules,
like breaking rules, man,
get thrown in the garbage, because you're like, no, this is how you actually do this sort of thing.
For sure, absolutely.
So no, I'm very, very familiar with that. When you're just watching, you're over the shoulder, and it's like, what?
That's why I go back to my questions when bands are telling me what should I do, what should I do. I'm like, that's why I don't even believe in schooling as much. It sounds terrible, but I'm like, if your passion is like, I want to record bands, then you should be working with engineers, not going to school for it. You should just get into a studio, start the coffee runs, and just learn, because you'll learn a hell of a lot more about the real producers than just going to school. And it won't cost you as much. You won't make anything either, but you're not spending 20 grand for 3 years behind a bunch of people. Or 20 grand, try like 100 grand or whatever for 3 years.
But I will say, as someone who's teaching recording.
Sorry.
No, but the thing is one of the first things, not to go on a rant, but one of the first things I do tell them is like, there's not a lot of jobs in the industry. You're usually making your own work. Luckily, a lot of the students, like 90% of them, they're all artists learning how to record and make their stuff better. And that's what I tell them. Like, we're here. And I won't sugarcoat stuff. We're here to learn how to make our recordings better and how it actually crosses the finish line.
And I agree completely. When I say that I shouldn't say that I don't trust schooling. I mean, I teach it myself. I do it. It's more when I hear people that want to depend on it, where I'm like, dude, you just got to get out there. You just got to go out there. If you can't afford the lessons, go give yourself some time behind somebody. There's people will always let you run coffee, and you can look over their shoulder and see what plugins they're using. You just got to pay attention, It's just, it's just how much drive you have sometimes, I guess.
And the other part too, it's like you going to fan shots. Like if you're not sure where to go, you can get into these networks, and school is a good way to kind of get into a network and at least branch out from there. Because if I wanted to move to Toronto and do music, so I found a school in Toronto, and that was my way to move from Peterborough up to Toronto. And then now I'm here, and then I was just branching. I moved all my classes to the morning, and I just was at the studio every night that I possibly could, because that's where I was learning as well. So time goes by so quickly on here.
That's okay. If we go a bit over, it won't kill me. Don't worry.
It's all good.
I have family showing up. That's the other thing. And if they show up, then I'm sorry if they walk in and they're like, it's actually my brother, and he's a monster. He's showing up at one point. I do tattooing as well lately. I've been bored. Through pandemic, I took up tattooing. So that's half the other thing. He was like, I've got one more interview thing to do, and he's going to show up, and he's going to be like, I want to get a tattoo, and he didn't tell me what time he's coming. So that's what I'm worried about as well.
All right, we'll figure that out. To fast track a little bit. So you formed Sumo Cyco.
Yeah.
You kind of got a vision for what you want to do and what the game plan is. And the thing too, just to touch on it, with Dodger, it's like you're trying to figure out like who really, like everyone's enjoying it, but who really wants to do this full time? And like that's another line in the sand. And I find that we get older, and usually people won't want to cross that one way or another. It's like they don't want to fully commit, and even talking about making that investment and going into debt when you have to explain to some bands like one of the questions I'd ask bands is like, how quickly can you come up with $10,000? And they think that I want it. I'm like, no, it's to put a plan together.
Yeah.
It's put a plan together. And they're like, oh, that's a lot of money. I'm like, if you think 10 grand's a lot of money and you want to run a business,
you're in trouble.
You are in trouble because
Yeah.
you need to not even feel $10,000.
Yeah. When we first start our any tour, I'm usually just dropping 20 G's right on my credit card right at the beginning of any tour.
Right off the bat.
Right off the bat. That's what'll cost our flights if we're going to Europe. Flights, tour manager if we need one. Most of the time I do it myself. But in case we're working with a band, if we're touring with another band, sometimes we'll cut costs with the other so that we can use their tour bus. So sometimes I'll pay into that crap. But I try just to even run with campers, our own tour vehicle. But by the time you buy the merch, because you got to invest in your own merch,
yeah,
because that's where you're also smart. This is where I was smart. I didn't let Napalm take any of my merch. When I signed into this is a huge one that people need to know.
That's your lifeblood on the road. That
do not sign. Any band, any label tells you that they're going to pay for your merch, but you got to sign the 50-50 deal. That's what it's called. If you haven't done the research, do the research.
360.
Not you, Mike, but anybody that might be listening. Do understand that you're selling the merch and they're taking a ton of that cut, so you're not walking away with anywhere. And that's where I was like, that can't happen because that's our bread and butter. T-shirts,
that's your lifeblood.
T-shirts are huge, so that's why I'd have to pay for it myself. So right away, all the merch that goes on the road, there's about $7,000 in merch right off the bat before we even hit the road. That just boom, that's the first thing, and then your work visas are $2,000 going to America, or it just all adds up. So right away you're like, oh, I'm 20 G's in the hole. And if you're a band that doesn't have even a following, I can see how it's really hard to want to sacrifice and be scared to put that money out. On the other hand, if you're not willing to put the money out ever and invest in yourself, you're never going to see a return. You just won't. I just don't see how it happens unless you're just that lucky 1% that, and it's just you got to put money into yourself.
Don't follow someone who got lucky. No, that's not a good plan. Like, don't be
like, oh, they did it that way. Yeah, it's going to work out. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work out that way usually. Moving forward, because I feel like Indie Week, I feel like there was maybe kind of a threshold that was crossed with Indie Week, because when you won Indie Week, you were able to go to Europe. And
that was our big one.
Capitalized on that.
Sure, I didn't. That's probably like our biggest turning point, actually. That turned us into a band that was about to start touring, and we'd. Again, when I was explaining, we were literally just trying to be an online band, a duet, Sky and I basically. And then we got some offers for some shows, and our first show was offered in like 4 days. And we had to go, Sieg Myers is the guy that runs the Phoenix. He ran the government at the time, or not government, the docks.
Docks, yeah.
Well, what was it called? It's called something else for a while there, but whatever it was, he was in there and he asked us to open for this band called Hollywood Undead, and we never played as a band. We never rehearsed. We just made the videos. So we were like, it was like an 800 person show. I was like, that's amazing for our first show. So we jumped on it. We figured out and rehearsed for 4 days, got our show done, and was like, we're a band. Like we've rehearsed and now we know to do this. So from there it started. But again, we'd already done this. We'd worked with Capital. We'd seen how much money. I'd seen what touring meant. I was not about to put this band in a van and just go across the country. You're just going to waste a bunch of money. You're going to play a bunch in front of no one. Like clubs that maybe have 4 or 10 people, they haven't heard of you yet. That's the worst. When a band just decides that even if they're not going to do any marketing, they want to go on tour. They want to go across the country, even though they hope no one's heard of them and they think it's going to work out. That's insane. If there's no PR, you're in trouble already. Again, you got to do the work. So for me, I was like, oh, we have a band, but I'm not sending us across the country. So for a year, we just did one-off shows around Toronto, Ontario, that I could just get us to here and there until, we started seeing our numbers go a little bit more. And then Indie Week came out, and I didn't know it was I didn't even know it was a competition. I just thought it was another one of these. I thought it's just another one of these Canadian Music Weeks, another one of the North by Norths, that kind of crap. And I was like, well, it's a good place to put yourself in front of new people. And it's close in Toronto. So I made us go out and do it, and the band was cool. And then like we had a good night playing wherever we were, and the next day I got a phone call, and they were like, "Yeah, you guys won." And I'm like, "Won what? What are you talking about?" And they're like, "You got to play tonight in another club, and then you go on to the finals." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" And they're like, "And then if you win, you go to Ireland." And I was like, "What?" So I call up my band, and I was like, "Hey, we can all go to Ireland if we win this." And my bass player goes, "Dude, I got to work today." And I was like, "You're fucking kidding me. Like, we have a chance here." And he blew us off. And I was like, "Dude." And I, granted, we didn't know anything about this, and it's hard for somebody to just like screw their work for
Bit of an
one
oversight.
night. And for a competition that all these other bands are in, and I didn't know, so I actually didn't give him too much trouble. I was like, cool. So I called Indie Boo back and was like, it's not going to happen. So the next year, I knew it was coming. I was like, we're doing this. We're fucking doing this. So I went the next year, but I had everybody. I told everybody make sure the weekend's free. I guarantee you, we're getting a call the next. I'm sorry to sound egotistical, but I was sure of
Oh,
our
it's confidence.
I was sure I
Yeah.
was confident of our act. Our act was coming together, and I knew that we had a good show live. So I was like, if they picked us last year, I can't see why we won't pick us this year. So they did on the first one, and they did on the second one, and then they asked us to come to finals, and we won Indie Week. And I was like, oh wow, this is so sick. And Sky was like, man, you called it all the way through it pretty much. I was like, man, after last year, I'm not fucking that up again. I planned everything right. In fact, I planned it so hard that they have a rule that says if they have a rule that on the second night, because we had to come play, you're only doing these 15-minute sets. They want to
Yeah.
see if anybody will come and see you for 15 minutes. And I was like, this is insane. So I told all our friends and everybody that can come for that 15 minutes, we're playing at 8:15. Don't miss it, kind of thing. But their rule in the book is if a band doesn't make the show or cancels, they can push you forward, and you have to just play anyways. And I was like, that's effed. We just promoted for a whole day that we're going to play at this, and they just moved us ahead for an hour. So I told Sky, don't come to the club. You just like, I'd rather just not even. So I put it, I kind of like bluffed them, and it was like, well, we can't play. Our singer's not here. And so Sky sat in the car for an hour, right in front of the club, like literally in front of the club for an hour, because they were trying to make us play because there was no band to fill the slot, or it wasn't an hour, it was a half an hour, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's some kind of mix up. And I just said, no, that's what time it is. And they were like, well, we can cancel you. I'm like, well, then cancel us, because it makes no sense anyways to go on without the crowd and the time that you told us to, because you're looking for a performance in front of a crowd. So I fought and fought. Same with their mic. They wouldn't give her a wireless mic. They're no, you got to use everything there. I'm like, well, then we won't play. You're not seeing the act that we prepared for you. So then they gave her the wireless mic, and they let us go on at the right time. And about 15 or 20 friends walked in just as we went on, and we won that night. So I was like, I did everything I could to make sure I won Indie Week, because I was like, we're going to Ireland for free. When you go to Ireland, you have to realize you're so close to the rest of Europe. So I wasn't thinking just, oh, we're just going there. We're going there to nail a bunch of other places, because I can afford to. I didn't pay for this stuff. So it was on a guy named Daryl Hurst. He's awesome. He runs Indie Week, and he's the man. And he paid for us to come, and we played 3 shows there. And then we said bye, gave him a big hug, and we hit over to England, and we hit a bunch of clubs that barely knew us. And I called. What was funny though is at the time was we called a PR agent, and we had a manager at the time that was working with us about LA, and Danny Oliva. And Danny was smart because he knew we were coming in England. He called a PR company in England, and we hired a PR company, even though we'd never been there, to at least promote that we were coming in, so that we weren't just nobody didn't know us. There's at least we got some PR, and Kerrang magazine, a bunch of things ran some stories because of who Sky was doing, this metal band or whatever we want to call us. And that's how we found our agent. Our agent heard about it and was like, hey, the PR company from UK that we hired thought we were liked what we were doing. His name's Adam Sager at Noise Cartel. He called TKO and was like, hey, Andrew, you should check out this band at Sumo Cyco. And so Andrew checked us out online, and then called basically his partner Dan DeVita in England to come and catch us in England, and Dan DeVita signed us the next day to TKO, and that's how we got our agent as well. So it was a pretty weird story, but I mean, sorry to be long-winded, but yeah. And
No,
that's
it's again, when you talk about like kind of
all
being one of
thanks to
those,
Indie Week. All thanks to Indie Week.
yeah, but this again, these opportunities come up, and like you could have just let it pass. Like the
Yeah.
opportunity could have just passed you by. And again, sorry to the original bassist. It's like there's that line in the sand. I gotta work, and that's another thing too, where it's like I know people need their jobs, and the thing too, the older we get, the more responsibilities we get. You get the mortgage, you get the car payment, you get the kids, you get
Yeah,
like,
it
there's
can
these
be
things
difficult.
there's these things that come in, and it's really difficult to kind of navigate those waters. And you talk about, we talked about briefly before too, just the, not say priorities in a selfish way, but just in a life way. Because there's birthdays, there's anniversaries, there's vacation time that gets missed. You're not going to Mexico for the week. You're just like, I've got vacation time. Let's try to figure that stuff out. And like the older we get, the more those come in, and it's difficult sometimes to realize it's okay for other people to decide it's not what you want to do, because there's a lot of sacrifices to be in music.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. You definitely, and especially because of
And
this
it's hard.
pandemic.
It's hard, yeah.
This pandemic is, I think this pandemic's really made some people open their eyes to going like, I don't even know if I want to work that grind anymore.
Yeah.
Like we've, I'm not gonna lie, our drummer right now probably won't be coming to Europe with us. He's when we leave in October. He's just right now he's in a place where he's not sure what he wants in life anymore. And it's crazy because we have a tour booked to go to England for 3 weeks starting in October, and then we possibly have a run in January, February, and March, like a 3-month run in America coming. None of it's confirmed, all of it. Well, the British stuff is, the UK stuff is confirmed, but the American stuff. But either way, it's a real shame to see a guy that has spent all these years with us working his butt off, telling me that he'd rather work a day job because he's kind of gotten used to this past 17 months. He's like, a grind is scary. He's just getting to an age where he wants to see other things in his life besides from just rocking and partying. And I understand that. I completely get it. Whereas me, I'm like, dude, don't you want to see how far you can take this? Look how hard you work to get us to this place. We tour everywhere right now, and he's still, this 17 months not playing a show has really changed him. Like, it's, that's interesting.
It's slowed a lot of people down.
Yeah.
And even at Rich from September Morning on a few weeks ago, and it's just like slowing down when you're usually planning 6, 12, 18 months out all the time. And when it forced you to just, grab a job and just kind of like hang out for a bit and slow down and just reevaluate some of the things that you want to do. September Morning is going to be back out on tour. Like, as soon as they could get out, they were going to do it. But for so many musicians, the last year alone, it's been tough, because you look at those little hits of when things are awesome. They totally cloud out all the things that are bad about being in a band, all the downsides. And
Sure.
so like that keeps you going, but it's just,
And then it's the opposite, right? Like, it's like,
yeah,
one really bad thing, or like something like this pandemic, you just, you start realizing some of the drive is just, you can start finding happiness other places that you never even knew existed. I think
Yeah.
that's for our drummer, Trozy. He's an awesome guy. He was over, it's so weird because there's no animosity, there's no bad blood. It's not like he's like a good buddy. He just was like, I don't know if I really
That's a
need
hard
to.
conversation.
He's like, I don't know if I need to go on the road anymore. I was like, really? And I'm like, don't you love it? I can see he loves cars. Like, lately he's loving a passion for cars. He wants to build a car. Like, he's getting this thing. And I'm like, I can see why. He's working, he's at home, it's a pandemic, and all he's doing is being around the car, and he's doing this stuff, and he's finding a real passion. So I was like, hey man, we love you to whatever you got to do. It's an open invitation whenever you want to go running with us again. It's kind of that thing. So I'm hoping he's still going to call me and be like, yeah, let's go. But I have a lot of good friends that want to go too. So, we'll figure it out. It's not a big deal.
I'm going through my list here. We touched on about half of the things that I wanted to chat about today. I know you got limited time today.
Yeah, just go. Just go until I'm telling you we're screwed. Until I hear see people yelling at me.
Okay, that works too. That first European tour, because most bands, we talked about it briefly, most bands have an issue even trying to go from Canada to the US. That freaks them out. The idea of crossing an ocean and then thinking like, okay, we're in Ireland, so like let's just go to Europe. There's a bunch of languages and just logistics, and there's lots of border crossings. That was your first time touring Europe?
Not as the first time at Sumo Cyco. That was our first time touring Europe. Yeah, like Sky and I had been across Europe with her when we worked with Capitol Records.
Okay,
more than once. But as a Sumo Cyco, like we hadn't been to Europe for 10 years, and the Ireland thing came up with Indie Week. So the first thing I said, it was like, if we win this Indie Week thing, I'm going to book us over in England. It's literally just a ferry ride for an hour and a half, and we're in England. And England's small, right? So you can cross that whole country in like 5 hours in a car as long as traffic's good. So there's so many towns. There's so many towns you can bop into in like 2 to 3 hour drives, plus the countryside is just gorgeous, and lots of cool pubs and clubs. So I was like, let's go there and hit a bunch of them. And that was our main thing. Is that was the other thing is our kind of music, I kind of always felt was more European sound necessarily than like like Canada. We've only toured Canada twice because
Canada's tough.
one time we've actually only toured right across Canada once because we were opening for Jinjer, not because we picked to do so, because it's so wide and so vast and the towns are so small and it's little places. So these drives are insane. And so when people get scared of Canada and America, or even America, when they're like, "Oh, America, I want to go to America more," I'm like, dude, America's wider than any, just like Canada. Like you're looking at 10, sometimes 8 to 10 hour drives between venues, depending on where they've booked you. You go into England and you can do like a 2 week run and hit like literally 14 clubs in 2 weeks, and you never drive more than 3 or 4 hours, and
Which means you can sleep a little.
you can sleep tons. On top of it, remember the denomination you're in pounds, right? So you go over there and it costs more to start, right? So you're like, hey, our merch costs us 8,000 pounds, maybe 10,000 pounds. But say if we make 10, 20,000 pounds off that, we can definitely pay the band off and pay the flights off, because you're moving it to Canadian dollars when you come home, right? And that Canadian dollar is all of a sudden like 5,000 pounds turns into 8,500 Canadian dollars. So you start to see where you can actually make a little bit more off the pound,
No, definitely. It's there's a lot of spreadsheets that bands don't think about. It's like, I want to get into music. It's like, okay, well, you're gonna be sitting in front of Excel a lot. Balance things out.
Sky loathes Excel, but she deals with it for me. She's amazing trying to deal with it, but it's her least favorite thing in the world to do is when she has to sit in Excel. She even calls her brother because he knows more of the, some of the hacks and the shortcuts that they give you, like and because she hates Excel, but that is one of the biggest things when you're in a band. It's like if you don't think about finances and how you're going to make money or what you're going to make, and you're just doing it, and you're hoping it's going to work out, that's just not the way to do it. You got to be thinking about everything. So I know, even this tour that we're doing, so we're going into England October, as provided everything works, fingers crossed. We were all vaccinated. That was the other reason our drummer is not sure if he's coming. He's like a little bit against this vaccination thing. And I was like, dude, what are you, crazy? But I don't want to give him trouble. Everybody's to each his own. But he said to me, he's like, I don't know if I want to get vaccinated. And that means that I won't be able to travel for a while. And I was like, well, then we really have an issue because we're traveling. So we went and got our shots. So if it goes right, we're supposed to go into, in October, and November we'll be in England. And I'm really excited about that. But right away, I have to do the numbers. We're going out with a band called Wednesday 13. They want to share a tour bus. The tour bus is going to cost X amount of dollars per day for this many days with a tour manager. This is the driver. This is the guitar tech that they want to use that I don't want to use because I know how to play my guitar and tech my own self. Like, I'm like, let's save the money. But they want, so it's like all these things add up because they're like, let's share on this, let's share on that. I'm like, okay. Like, I want to make it work with you guys, but there's things where I'm like, I don't need this. Like, I don't need a tour manager. I know what date it is. I know what time.
You're already on the bus.
I'm on the bus, Exactly, man. I'm on the bus. So you really have to add up those numbers and just go, man, we're just spending, there's 9 G's right off the bat when we walk in and pay the crew off, or we pay this off, and you have to be really careful and know where the costs are. And if you can cut those, that's why I use a camper van. Those are my favorites. I can rent a camper van out in UK. It's like a 7-berth camper van. I can get all the gear, all the merch, and 4 people in that little camper van, and we can live comfortably. We sleep there, so no hotel rooms, and no trailer I'm pulling. I can go to any site we want to see. We love that part. There's no rules that way. We just go and see whatever we want. And I stick to that, and it saves us a ton of cash. And it was a band called the Flatliners that out of Canada that I saw do that once. We were pulling up to a show called Underworld in London, on England. And I was like, we were in this huge tour bus with the Butcher Babies. And it was a bus that was so big that it could barely get through these small English streets. And they couldn't even park. It can't even park near the venues. You gotta get out of there, drop all the stuff, and then the bus leaves, and you gotta walk blocks before you find the bus. That shit happened all the time in England. And I pulled up to the parking spot where they had for Underworld, and there's this little camper there, and I was like, they're in our parking spot. So the bus driver's trying to wake them and move them, and these Canadian dudes walk out, and they're like, what? They're all like, looks like they're just tired, and they're like, yeah. And they're like, unfortunately, they were told they have to move because their show's over. They'd spend the night there. And I was like, look at that band, whoever those guys are. They have a camper with them, and just like a tour bus, but it's costing them probably a quarter of what it would cost us. And they just crashed right out of the venue. They like walked right in the thing, went to sleep, and whenever they wake up, they can get drunk, whatever. It's safe for them. So I asked them where they rented it out before they went back into the camper to move it. And they were like, oh, this company called Bunk Campers. And that was it. From there on, every time we ran, I was like, I'm not getting a Sprinter van in hotels or chipping it on buses and or spending on that. I was like, I'm literally getting this big camper van and I'll drive it. So I love the countryside anyways, and it saves us a lot of money. That's it's things you have to do to make sure you get to do what you want to do.
No, you got to just get out there and figure out what works for you. And usually you just kind of see it, because I've heard stories too, talking about campers, like I've heard stories where like if there's any mechanical issues, breakdowns and stuff, it can be a bit of a thing. Also, a lot of camper vans are meant for parking, not driving and hauling and stuff. So you got to be mindful how much gear you're bringing.
That kind of stuff I would be really scared of if I was doing Canada or America.
Mountains.
Yeah, where you're getting
Yeah.
into that, but being where you're crossing, say England, even in Europe, unless you're depending on where you're in Europe, you can. It's a lot easier to move with that kind of thing. And that's the thing is if you're smart, again, like I said, I checked this camper out when I saw this band, and I was like, how are they doing this? And it's like literally all their guitars. Same, this is what we do. All our guitars are stacked in the shower. We don't use the shower in the thing. They're
Yeah.
literally, all our merch is in the bay underneath it. Like our cab is underneath the table, holding the table up. Like there's just a million places you can put all the gear and all of a sudden be like, it's barely there. And it saves you instead of hauling a trailer that makes it even harder to find parking in Europe and costs you more money. So we started doing that. Smaller amps, instead of a 412, I get a 212 cab instead, and it works awesome. Mesa Boogie, we've been supported
Be
by Mesa for
fine.
years. They hook us up all the time with that shit. They give me two heads, and I tell them I call them Mesa and go, hey, we're gonna play in UK. Can we get some gear? And they always hook us up, and they always like send me an extra head, and I'm always like, I don't need it. I don't need it because
You don't have
as much as
space.
I have no space. Like it's exactly planned out, and I'm always giving them back the next head. Be like, oh man, if something goes wrong with this, I got my pedal board. I can go direct.
Figure it out. Yeah.
Saves me. Yeah, it saves me space.
I will say the idea of like being a camper versus hotels, because we probably have a mutual agreement on trailers. I don't like touring with a trailer because that extra length of your vehicle can make a lot of things more difficult when you can
Oh
just
yeah.
pull in. If you're just in a 15 passenger van, 12 passenger van, all your gear in there and everything you need. But the one thing I would usually go for the hotels. It's one thing for people to kind of decompress and have space, but the other thing. Always encourage the bands, treat that breakfast area as a grocery store. To help. So the idea, especially in the States, because like hotels are pretty affordable, and it's like, okay, if there's 4 of us, do not miss breakfast,
No.
and do not forget to fill your pockets and your backpack, because
Well,
like
what
that's good.
Sorry, I didn't mean. I completely understand where you're going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's
Sorry.
just the idea was just keeping costs down. It's like that's what I looked at it. The idea of getting a hotel, just going and sleeping and showering and just calling it a day. It's like no, like that breakfast area can make a huge difference with your budget.
So what we started doing was, unless it's really bad winter, but even in winter, what happened was the tours were starting to get bigger for us going into America, and it's obviously I would rather own my own. I wanted to own my own vehicle because it saves me way more much. Make way more money going into America if you own your own vehicle. So we found an
Yeah.
old tour bus, like an old shuttle bus, turned that into a tour bus. I gutted it, put six bunks in, a TV flat TV, well, with 40-inch screen TV, a fridge, a griddler
Fridge.
a griddler and a kitchen table and six seats and 6 bunks. It was really I actually went to town on this thing. It was great. When we did we did a whole Nonpoint Butcher Babies, like 3 month tour with them and a 2 month tour with Jinjer with this thing. And it was like just amazing. Like we saved so much money that way. So you're paying your band members. You're actually going, hey guys, you're not having to pay in the band. Here's $300, here's $400 a week. You're so many bands don't realize how you're just paying in half the time. You're always paying in.
Yeah.
You've got to learn how to pay out. And I was like, the more corners you can learn to cut, the more you can actually go, guys, I can pay you guys. And then everybody gets more excited to go on the road instead of just having fun because they're actually paying their rents when they come home, right? And that's what we do is we make sure that the band members we can all cover our costs when we come home. That's really important to us. So we used that vehicle and it was great. It was like I still pulled a trailer. I knew it was important to have the trailer, but I didn't get it too big. And I looked at like it's smaller than a tour bus, but it was comfortable. And what we started doing was instead of using Walmart's the way tour buses will do because you get a bathroom 24/7, we were using KOAs. We use campsites. It's like $40 bucks. and for the four of you, and you'd pull in and you'd have a full campsite that I can plug the camper in, so I have all the power without it running, and then you get like a pool, the showers, the jacuzzi, a mini putt, and we would start. Kid you not, that's what we would look every night that there was a day off or a night that we had after a show. The first thing we did was we just were like, the campsites. Why bands want to sit at Walmart? We're like, I guess because a bus can't go into a campsite as well, but we really did start going like, this is how you do it, because now we're open fire cooking, we're making breakfasts on our griddler, having bacon and eggs. We always carry a barbecue. We have a barbecue with us, so we don't eat out at all, right? Like, so what we do is we hit a grocery store, we'll go to Walmart, and we'll buy like a couple $100 worth of groceries, throw it in the fridge, and we just cook for each other, and we make wraps, and we do stuff like that, and we tailgate every night. So we finish our set. That's why I never like headlining, because it was like, there's no tailgating when you've headlined. You got to get out. So my favorite's playing a 4-band bill, and we're second on, because then I got 2 bands that are going to play while we're tailgating, and I drink beers, and I drop the tailgate of the trailer, and we bring the barbecue, and we make burgers and steak sometimes, and salmon and chicken, and then and we feed some of the other bands. That's how you get kind of buddies with bands too, is like have a little bit of a system where you get to know these guys quicker. It's funny how like a band will ignore you unless you have a burger on the grill, and they're like, hey man, can I have a? I'm like, for sure. What's your name, dude? And it's really easy to become friends a lot faster when you have a couple things like that.
Yeah, it's one thing to ask if anyone needs coffee. It's another thing to ask if anyone needs a burger.
Oh, I do it all the time, man. It's a great icebreaker. I have a little griddler there, and I just, hey man, what's that? Frozen burgers? Hey guys, a frozen burger is still better than McDonald's burger if you do it right and you do it your way, and you've got the right groceries. It's still more delicious than this.
We'll not argue that. We'll not argue that at all. We're over an hour. No,
I've only got another 6 minutes, and then I gotta go.
Just go, but I think this is probably a good place to wrap things up, because I've got a good divide on other things I'd love to chat about. So hopefully get you back here for part 2. Maybe after you get back back from tour, we can chat a bit more about it. But
sure.
Anything else you want to add before we sign off here?
Oh man, I just appreciate you letting me come on here. If anybody's watching, they can check out the band, sumocyco.com. You can't miss us if you look us up. It's pretty obvious. We live online a lot. So and we're going on tour in UK in October. If anybody's out there, feel free to come and see it. And fingers crossed that it works. But good luck to everybody that's out there and still dealing with the pandemic. I hope the best and good luck for everybody in 2021. I hope that's going to be a good music year for everybody, that we finally get to go and see a lot of concerts. It's
funny we have to think about what year it is, because it's just been a super long 2020.
It is 2020. It's 2020. It's 2021. Right? Yeah. It's 2021 right now. I meant 2020. Yeah, I meant 2022.
Okay.
It's 2021 right now, right?
It is.
Fuck, I'm 1 year behind already.
I think of you did say that. But I do think of it. It's just I'm looking forward to 2022 already with so many things.
Well, same with us. I'm like, hopefully the more regulations will be worked out. I was getting scared hearing some of these variants. Like, it's like, if you don't have the right shot, you still can't get into some of these countries. I'm like, oh man, fingers crossed that we don't run into that problem. So we're all trying to do the right thing for us personally, and I think we'll be in good shape. And fingers crossed that once we hit the fall, things are still moving in the right direction, and then definitely into next year we can get back to the blessing and the curse that is the music industry for us working. I feel ya.
Just the details, if you're watching this on YouTube, the details where to find Matt and find Sumo Cyco. I'll put that in the details below. I just want to thank everyone. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt. Oh, so good. I just want to thank everybody.
I'm an interrupter. It happens all the time.
No, it's all good. Just want to thank everybody for taking part in the chat today. There's quite a few joining us on YouTube today, which is fantastic. Cool. Again, much appreciated if you like and subscribe. That does help the channel. Does help the.
I hope I didn't talk so much that we didn't get anything accomplished. Sorry.
No, we did. We did. Find out why you picked up a guitar. Cool. Supported by the family-ish in the beginning, and then I'm always interested about that. That's the main thing I like to hear about. But you've got a lot of stories. I know we didn't even get to download.
We haven't even scratched the surface. We have so much history. This band's been around for quite a bit now.
I was trying to rework the intro to put Download Festival in there, because see the pictures from it and everything. I'm just like, it just sounds awkward. So we'll get there. Anyway, we'll get there part 2 with things. Again,
I'm fine with that.
Just want to thank everybody for taking part in the chat. Once again, my name is Mike Langford. This has been DearBands Live. Thanks again Matt Drake, for joining us today.
Thank you.
That is our time today. Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone. Cheers.
And talk to you later.
Mike, thanks so much, man.
Well, thank you, Matt. All right.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I appreciate the time, brother. You reach out anytime you want, okay?